Hi, I'm Lon Henderson. I'm at the InterNACHI School in Boulder, Colorado. We're at the House of Horrors. We have a garage set up here at the house. We're going to do a garage inspection today at the house. So when we start out a garage inspection, we typically walk in from the house, and on a normal house, we would have a door here. This door should be a fire-rated door or a solid wood door. If it's solid wood, it should be at least 1 3/8 inches. It should never be a hollow core door. Solid wood is generally interpreted to include particle board. Also, it can be a fire-rated door. These are typically a metal skin door. The fire rating will be a tag on the hinge side of the door. So if you open the door, you can see that tag. They typically say 20-minute rating. If the tag has been painted over, I make a note that it appears to have a fire rating, but the tag has been painted over. We should also have an automatic closer on this door, whether it's boomer hinges or some other closing device. We need this door to automatically close. People disable these closers, take them off for a lot of reasons. Maybe they don't like carrying in the groceries, but nevertheless, it's required to have an automatic closer on this door. And it should seal tightly in the jamb. So we want the weather stripping on here to be in good condition, sealing off on the threshold nicely, that sort of thing. And the opener should fully close the door into the jamb. So we step in, we should have a light switch on the inside of the garage. There can be another one outside, but there's supposed to be a light switch on the inside here. Also, as we're looking down at our floor, what's the condition of our floor? We see a few little cracks here. The kind of cracks we see here, no big deal. If we see breaking, settling, things like that, that can change any water that gets in here to flow against the house, we're not going to be wanting to see that. In general, the garage slab should be poured where water flows out of it. Why does water matter? Well, particularly if you live in a snow area, you pull into your garage with 2 inches of snow and ice packed on your car, that's going to melt off. We want that water to flow toward the entrance of the garage and not back into it. So, checking the condition of the slab, generally speaking, the slab is poured independently of the foundation walls. Rarely is what's happening in here going to affect the slab. However, if you're in an area where they do complete slab foundations, that can be different. So knowing what goes on, the normal and typical building practices for your area is very important. Also knowing what your local authority having jurisdiction wants for garages and how they interpret the code helps you out a lot, because different municipalities will have different requirements for features in garages, and one of those is concerning the firewall between the house and the garage. Gypsum board, sheetrock, drywall, whatever you want to call it, is typically used for fire resistance or a firewall between the house and the garage. It should be a minimum 1/2 inch sheetrock. Up here we have a piece of 1/4 inch. That would not be allowable. Some areas want to see a higher or a better type of sheetrock here, and they will ask for type X 5/8 inch fire code sheetrock, which is a reinforced type of sheetrock. We tape all the connections with drywall mud and tape. Screws are taped or drywall mudded over. Any penetrations through the wall are sealed, typically with drywall mud, never yellow foam. That's flammable. The fire-resistant foams are allowed. If we have a attic access coming into the garage, that should also be a fire-resistant material, which normally is going to be gypsum board again. Plywood for that attic access doesn't cut it. Then for our electrical should always be, or at least since the 70s, GFCI protected. So we typically pull out our little three-light tester, stick it in there. This one's a little loose. We might make a note that it's the outlet's a little loose. Check the test button on it. This one didn't trip it, so this would not be a compliant GFCI here. Over here we have a GFCI outlet in, and it works, and you can also use the test button on it. Always should have a cover on it. Also, no extension cords allowed, although people do it all the time. But nevertheless, if you have a garage door opener, they should run a dedicated outlet to it so that the garage door opener plugs directly into the outlet. Any wiring on the surface of a wall is supposed to be in conduit. If it's up on the ceiling, that's considered out of harm's way and not considered an issue. One thing about what we see here, we have some plywood here. Between the living quarters of the house, the part of the house where people live, and the garage should always be a firewall here. So plywood over here would not be allowed. On the exterior walls, that's fine. No living quarters over there. Keep in mind, we have cars with a gasoline tank in the garage. We have typically lawnmowers stored in here, sometimes storage cans of gasoline. There's lots of things in a garage that can burn. We want some firewall between the garage and the house to give time for the fire department to get here. Also, we have here a furnace flue coming into the garage. This again, we don't do this, not allowed, and certainly under no circumstances a return air. So anytime you see something like this, it's an instant call out. Even if they have met the exceptions and properly installed it, we can't easily know that as home inspectors. We call this out for an HVAC tech to evaluate it. In high likelihood, it's going to have to be removed. So we've now looked at this part of the garage. Now we're going to check the doors. So one of the first things we do is we look at the condition of our door. What does it look like? Many times the door will be closed, but if it's open like this, what's the condition of our hinges? Are they tight? Wood doors are notorious for loose hinges. The bolts, the lags, the nuts on the bolts come loose. I'm constantly walking around, checking them, seeing if they're tight. Do I see evidence of slippage on the hinges that tells me that we have a loose nut or bolt? I tell clients, this is a common maintenance issue. Once a year, go around with a socket or a wrench, snug these up. Don't try to over tighten them. You can strip them out. Obviously, sloppy hinges can lead to something worse and can actually cause a failure of the door. So that's a maintenance item that you typically see with wood doors. With metal doors, steel doors, almost never a problem, but very common with wood doors. So we work our garage door and see how it works. Does it operate smoothly? Is it herking and jerking around? Do we see the rails flexing and bowing or anything like that? Does it look smooth? Also, we're checking our springs. Here we see an extension spring here, and what do you know? It's not a safety type. We don't have a cable running through it in case that spring breaks. These springs are under tremendous tension, and if they snap, things fly around, people get hurt. So we want to see a cable in there. There's no grandfathering for this. There should be a safety cable in there. So now we've seen the door go down. We run it again, see how it behaves. Let it run. And then run it on a cycle down. Now we're going to check the electric eyes. Electric eyes are a safety feature. Kick your foot through it, nice and easy. Door should go up. Electric eyes should be no more than 6 inches above the ground. The opener is flashing, telling us that something interfered with the function of the door, and it's a way for the opener to let us know that something got in the way, something happened. Keep in mind, we have the most manufacturers' recommendation is 6 inches off the floor. The obvious reason is silly little puppies, dumb little kittens, and certainly crawling babies will hopefully trip that electric I-beam and send the door up. The other door here has a different type of spring on it, so we will take a look at that. Again, we're checking the function of the door, seeing how it's working. Here we have a torsion spring. Torsion springs, in this case, are attached to the torsion bar at both ends. If you have a broken spring, you're always going to have a gap in the middle of it. If you see a broken spring, that's it, you're done with that inspection. Write it up, move on, don't try to operate the door. The opener is not designed to lift a heavy door by itself. That spring creates a counterbalance that assists the opener in operating the door. And then we just run this door again also. So regardless of how many doors the house has that you're inspecting, you're going to check all the doors. Now, that's a basic inspection. One other thing when you're on the outside is the condition of the jamb. There's normally going to be a rubber weather stripping here. We're going to check the bottom of the gasket on the bottom of the door. These are frequently torn. Does the door seal to the floor nicely? Often these slabs will be bowed up a little bit and the door will close, hitting the bow and leaving a big gap at the corners. And they can make adjustments for the, or there's manufactured adjustment pieces that can be put on that gasket that will seal off on the floor better for that. So that is our basic garage inspection. However, there are a few more things that you can test for. And one of the biggest is the auto reverse, the obstruction sensor that garage door openers are designed to have. Underwriters Laboratory 325 standard calls out for doors, garage door openers, to have safety devices. Not every garage door manufacturer uses electric eyes. So if you don't see electric eyes in a fairly modern opener, then you might be checking the other features of the opener. And one of those is the wood board test that is part of the UL 325 standard. However, many home inspectors don't like to do this test. You lay a 2x4 block in the middle of the floor underneath the door, middle of the door opening, close the door on it. What sometimes happens is if the opener isn't adjusted properly, the door comes down, hits that block, torques everything, things start coming loose, it can be ugly. So many inspectors don't like to use that test. An alternative test that's recommended by the Insurance Council is to put a roll of paper towels on the floor. In their testing, they found out that sometimes the block test did cause the door to reverse, but something that was more human-like a baby on the floor or a silly little dog, did not cause it to reverse. So the Insurance Council actually recommends the paper towel test, the roll of paper towels. Another test, and one that I typically use, is the hand test, which manufacturers use to calibrate or set the opener, or they recommend for setting the opener. So installers, when they're making the adjustments on the opener for the downforce and the stop point, will use this test to calibrate it. And it's a test where you have some control over the door going down. You're less likely to cause damage to anything. And the way we do that is we get it rolling, we walk up to it, and as it gets down to this low position, we grab the bottom of the door with our hands. You know, you exert a reasonable, and it's subjective, amount of resistance to that, somewhere in that 15 to 20 pounds of resistance, and the door should reverse. If it pushes through your hands, even if it might go ahead and pass a true block test, that it's still not calibrated properly to how most manufacturers recommend the installation on their opener. So I find that that's a pretty good test for testing them. Another thing, by the way, the electric eyes, remember, must be within 6 inches of the floor. People will mount them on the wall, above the opener, things like that for whatever their own reasons are. That's absolutely a call out, because now they're only relying on the one safety, which is the obstruction sensor. Openers with electric eyes will have both systems. The systems that do not have the electric eyes will only have the obstruction sensor, and for those, I highly recommend that you do at least the hand test for that. And that is the conclusion of a garage inspection. Thank you very much.